Better late than never. Steve Kerr has acknowledged that the Golden State Warriors need a center, and it cannot be Draymond Green. Who could that centerpiece be? We're discussing on today's Locked On Dubs.
You are Locked On Warriors.
Stop trying to turn the page on us so fast.
Your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
We got 4 championships.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Every team has a chance if Steph's on the team.
Your team every day.
Good, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Warriors. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ways that you can check out the show: YouTube. We stream live after the games during the offseason, Monday through Friday, and whenever news breaks. Also, take us on the go wherever you get your audio podcast. We are always there for you. Be sure to be a subscriber and a regular of this show. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is Charlie Walter. My credentials: worked at 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area. That's the flagship station of your Golden State Warriors. Also saw a title run for CBS News Bay Area. Call letters KPIX. All right, some things I want to get to on the show today. Kind of just break down where the Warriors stand as the offseason is upon us. We've kind of, I guess, recapped the season in a nutshell, what the Warriors need to do better, where they stand as an organization, where they can make some upgrades, and some of the roadblocks that stand in their way to making said upgrades. So let's just dive in right there with who we think is going to be returning next year. I guess starting with the most important part being the financials of this all. It's huge when it comes to how the Warriors are going to tweak this thing over the summer. Gonna soar past the luxury tax, that's for sure. 187.9 million. The first apron of 195 million, or the second apron of 207. That's the most likely option. And we know Joe Lacob from last summer has stated that he will pay the big bucks. He will go past this threshold and spend all the money that he needs to win, if it means winning. So first of all, I guess the biggest thing is acknowledging where the Warriors stand in terms of the league as a whole. I mean, the Thunder just won 68 games this season. They're in prime position to get even better. The reality is the Warriors, they either need to do some incredible fleecing this offseason. They need home run moves that are just, what do we call them? Buy low candidates that break out for the Dubs, that sort of thing. That's really the only way to legitimately be up there with OKC entering next season, because like the Thunder, they just have assets and they're in a position right now to where they can get a lot better. And the Warriors, it's going to be hard, but injuries do happen. And for Golden State, they've made their bed, and that is they are going to try to contend for these next couple of years as long as they can. So let's start with the bottom up of the roster. Guy Santos, Quentin Post, they're both on team options. I would expect the Warriors to pay the piper with the peanuts there. Both of them cheap. Both of them provide value in different ways. And I do not think that both those second-round draft picks would be beneficial to letting go. So I would expect both those players to be back. Trayce Jackson-Davis under contract, not expecting him to go anywhere unless he is a part of a package that is a bigger deal for the Warriors. When it comes to Gary Payton II and Kevon Looney, that's an interesting dynamic this offseason. Both their deals have expired. Now, they could have thrown them in a deal at the deadline and brought back a player in return. They decided against that, and they showed their value in multiple games in the postseason. If their value is significantly lower than the $8 million they made this year, then it's a possibility that we're talking vet minimum type thing. If it's higher or if it's the same, don't be surprised if maybe one of these two are out the door. But until one of these two, or both for that matter, are no longer Warriors, you just have to assume that they're Steve Kerr's guys and that they're going to suit up in a uniform next year. I thought there was no chance Gary Payton II would be back when Steve Kerr and company mentioned positional size being of importance this offseason, even though Peyton plays around the rim and plays a lot bigger than his size. But of course, at the postseason end of season post press conference, Steve Kerr alluded to the fact that they want to bring back Gary Payton if possible. So we'll see. If they're on this team, it's most likely that the Warriors got a good deal there. Buddy Hield is under contract based on his relationship with Kerr and with Jimmy Butler and with Steph Curry. I would be surprised, very surprised, if they got rid of his shooting and spacing, considering his $9 million is team friendly. Like $9 million to pack a punch and go for 33 and 24 in the playoffs. Not a ton of $9 million players are doing that in the NBA. So I would imagine that he's going to be back, and clearly he would like to be in this organization.
I can say this is the most happiest I've ever been in playing basketball. And I tell the guys, man, the season went by so fast, and because it was so much how much fun I had. It was a lot of joy, be around Steve and his group, be around the players, and the training staff. They all made me feel welcome. And I feel like it went by so fast. And like most teams I've been to go on, it feels like it was very long, like when I'm getting out of here. But this organization, I never felt one day like, I gotta wait for summer. And like, I'm really mad. I have to like go enjoy summer because basketball was so fun. Meaning basketball was so fun. Preparing every day for a playoff game was fun. And I really enjoy being here, man.
Protect that man at all costs. Keep him in the Bay. I would expect Buddy Buckets to be back. And remember, he was a part of the Klay Thompson sign and trade last season. And that is the most likely route to the Warriors getting legitimate role players, rotation help this offseason. Free agency, there's huge names. I mean, LeBron James, Kyrie, Harden, Chris Middleton, Miles Turner, James Harden. Forget about all of them for now. Forget about all of them. That is not how the Warriors are going to get better. The cap outlook will not allow the Warriors to make any splashy moves in free agency. The biggest moves are going to come in some form of a trade and most likely some form of a sign and trade. Really, there's only 4 avenues for the Warriors to get better right now. One is the Jonathan Kaminga sign and trade. He is their most important asset. They have not ruled out the fact that he could return next season. Steve Kerr said if he does return, they're giving him the keys. It's going to be him. It's going to be Butler, Draymond, Steph Curry. From day one, they're going to make it work. Jimmy Butler would work with him in the offseason. I don't expect that to happen. I think Kaminga's probably worth a little bit more than he's being paid. And the sign and trade seems like the best avenue for every party here. The other step 2 to getting better, the taxpayer mid-level exemption. Step 3, vet minimums. Step 4, you trade other players like Pods, Moody, Draymond, or you just bank on insane internal development. You tweak a thing here and there. You bring back Moody, Pods, that starting lineup that the Warriors had. You add in a center. Maybe you get someone that's a defensive presence. You find your Steven Adams or whoever it may be in unrestricted free agency, and you go from there. But that's what I want to get into. The centerpiece for the Warriors. The vet minimums, specifically for Golden State, and the taxpayer mid-level exemptions, they'll be in play and they're going to be important. Like, they have to hit on one of these. They have to. You look at Milwaukee last year. They were paying Gary Trent Jr. $2 million, and he had a pretty good year. That's the type of deal that the Warriors need to make this offseason. A success is not landing Paul George or Lauri Markkanen or any of those moves that they were in contention for last summer. It's been made clear. Bolstering depth, just having a more complete, consistent, reliable rotation is the move. And we saw it, case in point, against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Steph Curry goes out, and there was just not enough playmaking, not enough, maybe talent isn't the right word, but not enough developed talent that could play together and they could just steal one game in 4 to keep that series alive. So that's what the Warriors are going to be doing this offseason. The bigger team. Steve Kerr has acknowledged that positional size is huge. Having a center is huge. Who could that center be? We're going to discuss coming up on Locked On Warriors. All right, everyone, take control of your finances. It's Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that is where Monarch Money comes into play. It's your personal CFO and gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop managing your money and you just start building your wealth. You get surprising insights like how much you're using on certain services, all in one convenience where you can track the spending and plan long-term goals on one app, and you can collaborate with your partner to make sure you can share the account there. So take care of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Let's get back to it. All right, so the bigger team for the Golden State Warriors. Steve Kerr has acknowledged that getting a center is of utmost importance this offseason. Positional size is big too, if those players that are positionally bigger can play basketball. That's kind of important.
I mean, I don't want to start next season with Draymond as our starting five. I think it's doable for the last 30 games like we did this year, but I think you see the toll it takes on him. He's talked about it too, and it's why we started out this past season starting Trace and Draymond. It's important if those guys with positional size are good basketball players. So you can't just add size for size sake, and the pieces have to fit together. And we have a really unique puzzle.
It's going to be really, really difficult to find a center that checks all the boxes. Warriors were so good with specialty players this season that specialized in something. Buddy the shooter, Kevon Looney, just the gritty rim protector, kind of do it all, sets hard screens. Gary Payton, the defensive mastermind that may or may not have lost a step from his best days back in 2022, but still gets after it defensively. JK, the wrecking ball that can get down the lane, that has elite athleticism, play above the rim. Draymond, the defensive specialist. Jimmy Butler, the high IQ. A lot of guys that aren't two-way players necessarily on this team, specifically with the role players. And it's going to be hard to find a center realistically that checks all the boxes for the Warriors. Someone that can shoot, someone that can run the floor, someone that can defend. There aren't many of those guys in the league, and there are very few that are likely on the move. If you take away the financials out of this and take away the possibility of it actually happening, like if we just want to spitball right now on some names, the name to me that would make the most sense, and granted, let's just sugarcoat it by saying, I don't think this is going to happen. I don't even think it's going to be a name that's tossed around and that is even a potential option, but just this mold of a player would be so well with the Warriors. Let's call him a mystery player. This guy averaged a double-double for 6 straight seasons. He's an outstanding rebounder. He could step out and hit the deep shot. Averages 17 and 13. He's young enough at 29 years of age, but he's also a seasoned vet to the point where you put him on a team. He has a couple of years left on his contract. It kind of intertwines with overlaps with Curry, Butler, Draymond's contracts, and he's a younger piece to the puzzle, I guess you could say. That player is Domantas Sabonis. Likely an impossibility, like I said. However, what's the Windhorst? Kings are a mess. They're down bad. They were on this program earlier in the season after they whooped the Warriors, talking the trash, saying, we had Alan Stiles on the show, and I had to cut him off because he said, I feel bad for Warriors fans. I feel bad for Kings fans right now. They're a mess. They're a mess. They just moved the Chicago Bulls over West Coast and said, hey, let's run this DeRozan Levine thing that didn't work in Chicago. Let's try it in California's capital. Why not? And it didn't seem to work whatsoever. But they have one more year of DeMar DeRozan. It's about $25 million. Jonathan Kaminga, he could be a replacement that makes sense. He could be intriguing. It's a franchise that's in a position right now to where you give him the keys, you allow him to do his thing. He can potentially develop there. They could also use a point guard after fumbling Halliburton and Fox the last few years. And Brandon Pajemski could be a valuable trade asset to include in a deal where he's only a couple $1 million. Him, Kaminga, how do you make the money work? Now, there are cracks in this proposition. First, would the Kings even trade him? That's very important. Two, Draymond Green stomped on him years back. Would that be an issue? And three, ironically here, I think the only way you can make it happen is Draymond Green would almost have to be out of the equation for this to work because of the financial issues. And that's why if you think the Warriors should just go after these big money players this offseason, it just doesn't work this way financially. It is hard to envision a world where you can pay two guys $60 million. You could pay Draymond Green nearly $30 million. And then you can add in a player like Sabonis who makes $43 million. Just too many variables here to think that this ever becomes a talking point this offseason. But I love the fit. Like, I do think Matt George of Locked On Kings brought it up the other day in like the group Twitter message and said, hey, would hypotheticals here. If I threw Sabonis on the market, would anyone want him? And there were a bunch of teams saying, nah, we're good. We're good. And I thought about it for a second and said, honestly, he'd probably be a pretty good fit for the Warriors. Sabonis, Jimmy, Curry, Buddy, plays almost every game, rarely hurt. However, like I said, until there's real smoke, we'll put this one to rest. Not expecting this one to come up as an option. All right, so now that I wasted 2 minutes on a dream hypothetical that's not going to happen, let's get into some names that have been brought up and that could be somewhat realistic. It is very clear the Warriors are looking for size. Let's start with two big men, Steven Adams and Brook Lopez, both unrestricted free agents. Lopez makes a lot of sense. The Stanford grad coming back to the Bay Area. He stretches the floor, shoots 37% from three on volume. Like, he'll hit a couple a game. He's extremely old. That's terrifying. The last thing you need with your already 36, 37 core is to add in another 37-year-old. However, durability has not been an issue. Lopez played in 80 games this past season, 79 the year before, 78 prior to that. So he's someone that plays a lot. Steven Adams is another name that I want to bring up. And I know a lot of Warriors fans really like Steven Adams, mainly because he's a cool dude. Now, again, I mentioned the Sabonis thing with Draymond, the Steven Adams thing with Draymond. It was a while ago, but man, that looked painful. But recency bias comes into play here. Haven't seen him in really the last two playoff runs. A couple of years ago for Memphis, just dominated the glass. And this past season for Houston, once again, dominated the glass. Not really an offensive threat at this point, although he did go off one game against the Warriors. But typically, it's a few mop-up buckets here and there. That is not what is given Steven Adams the big bucks. And by big bucks, I just mean NBA money is big bucks. Cheaper option, but he is able to defend at a high level. He can affect the game on the glass. He's huge, and we know the Warriors want to play with pace. And in a perfect world, they want to move up and down the floor. Steven Adams doesn't really seem like he would fit in this scenario. However, Houston kind of wanted to do the same thing, and he provided a very, very big role off the bench for the Rockets this season. So if given the choice, leave your thoughts. I'd go with Lopez. If either of those two are enticing for you, leave them in the comments. Chat as well, but definitely the comments for sure. And let some other Golden State Warriors fans banter back and forth whether those two would be of intrigue at all for the Warriors this upcoming season. A dream fit, Miles Turner, for so many reasons, but it's a dream. Pacers would be fools to not have him as a part of their future. I don't think we need to talk much about Miles Turner. He was an intriguing piece early in the season before the deadline when the Pacers were looking like a play-in team at best. They're in the Eastern Conference Finals for the second straight year. I just don't see how they break it up and don't find a way to bring back Miles Turner, although he is a free agent. One that's a little more realistic, but again, is a good player, is Jarrett Allen of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The big roadblock here is that the Cavs won 60 games and they would have to decide to trade him until, he's on the block, until they're fielding offers for him. It's a big old nothing burger. But you think about it, they already have Mobley. Allen's about $30 million, give or take. That could be on par with Kaminga's salary when you think about it. Plus, what do the Cavs have? They have great guards in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. What do they not have? A wing? I mean, a better wing? A wing that has high upside? So could a playmaking wing like Jonathan Kaminga be on their wish list? Would you need to throw in draft capital? How would you be able to make that work? Is it intriguing to you? Would you even want Jarrett Allen is the team's starting center if he was available? Again, let me know in the comments. Mark Williams of the Hornets. Always have liked his game. I just don't think it seems that likely. I don't know how you make the trade work. I mean, the Hornets were willing to trade him at the deadline before the physical came into play. And again, this market, the whole Carlos Correa thing a couple of years ago, I don't know if we want to be dealing with, physicals that went awry. So who knows there, but he was on the move and they were willing to trade him, and he is good. Like, I like Mark Williams' game a lot. John Collins is a name that I've seen thrown around. No, it doesn't make sense. There's just, unless Draymond's not on the team, it doesn't make any sense to me. He's not a true center. I won't entertain it. I don't think John Collins makes this team much better. If there's a exodus of a lot of players, we're talking we need 6 new roster rotations for players that went out the door in trades for whatever, then, maybe you entertain it. But where the roster is expected to be heading into the summer and some of the players that are supposed to be retained, John Collins just doesn't make any sense to me. Interesting trade partner. Very interesting trade partner. The team that all but landed Cooper Flagg. And at this point, they landed him. They said they're getting Cooper Flagg. And they did it very unexpectedly. So I would imagine the Mavericks will now clear the runway for Cooper Flagg from day one. That means there could be some negotiations there for PJ Washington. But a 6'6" guy can stretch it. But a 6'6" guy, not really what the Warriors need. They need some true size. So I'd be looking at a couple of other guys. They have Anthony Davis on their team. And God, I would love a healthy Anthony Davis, but that's obviously not happening. But how many bigs can they have? Seriously. Daniel Gafford. If they say no to Daniel Gafford, how about Derek Lively? Again, how many bigs do you need? Gafford specifically, at 6'11", his contract matches up dollar-wise with Moses Moody. Now, would Dallas want Moses Moody? I don't know. Would the Warriors want to give up Moses Moody? Joe Lacob seems to really like his draft picks. We heard that. But Moses Moody also got DNPs in the playoffs and was extremely inconsistent, and you need a big man somehow, some way. And when you look at what the Mavericks are missing, it's guards, man. It's that shooting guard position. Like, they could use Moses Moody behind Clay. The contracts match up there. They have the flexibility to make it happen, considering they have a young Lively and they have an older Anthony Davis above him. Like, at some point, how much size do you need? We're spitballing here. But the hoarding size, the Wolves did it for a minute with all the 7-footers they had. And at a certain point, they decided, you know what? Let's give Karl Anthony Towns to New York, give up some of our size, and bring back some combinations that we need in terms of, in that case, it was DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. But maybe that makes sense to go after a Daniel Gafford. Again, with all these, please hop in the comments, make this interactive. Let me know what you think about some of these players. But one thing is for certain, it's that the Warriors cannot have Draymond Green as their biggest body. It works for stretches of the season. It works against certain teams, but he's getting older. You get more bruises, getting banged up against some of these players. And the recency bias shows us the Julius Randle thing down low. I mean, Draymond could keep up with him. Randle's huge. And with Rudy Gobert down there as well, the Warriors just need some size any way they can get it. Kevon Looney, a free agent. Do they move on from him? Is he one of the rotation pieces that they bring in to kind of, keep that stalwart in the middle there for Golden State? Sure, he can be. but they need more than just that. And they can't be banking on Quentin Post internal development to get there. Again, he's a nice piece as well, can stretch it, but come on now. If you're banking on Looney and Post being your starting center going into next year with some of the capital that the Thunder have, and the Thunder could be looking to go back-to-back when it's all said and done, it's not going to happen. You're not going to compete with the best teams in the NBA. So you got to make a deal with one of these teams that makes sense for both parties and not even really try to fleece another team. Just do what Minnesota did and find a team that wants one of your pieces, Podziemski, Moody, whoever it may be, and get someone on your wish list, aka some size. So that's got to be top of the wish list. Also, near the top of the checklist is a scoring punch from the guard or wing position. Where could they find that? Let's discuss coming up next. All right, Steve Kerr, this offseason. We know that he's a big fan of players creating. We know he's a big fan of cutting into the teeth of the defense and really, from there, passing the ball. It's such a huge part of a Steve Kerr offense, passing to open up opportunities for other players, and you got to be able to knock down shots. But here's Steve Kerr on what he's looking for this offseason from not just the shooting guard or small forward position, every position. Everyone there looking at this offseason and that they've looked at in past off seasons has to somewhat fit this criteria.
It doesn't matter what position it is. We need guys who see the game, can make plays, and can connect the game and create easier opportunities for their teammates. You guys know me, I'm a huge proponent of passing, of the ability to pass the ball. I think it unlocks everything. You watch some of the teams doing well. You look at Indiana right now. They're passing from, 4 or 5 different spots. They got 3-point guards that are, constantly attacking and breaking down the defense and moving the ball. So I'm always, that's why Brandon, even in his shooting struggles, I got asked several times during the series why I was staying with Brandon, passing and playmaking and running through the catch and creating a rotation, moving the ball. That's the game. Otherwise, you end up with 5 guys standing around, just staring at each other. Even if all 5 guys can shoot, if they can't pass, it doesn't matter. You're not breaking the defense down.
Comment from one of the viewers, Godzilla the Creator, says he likes Jabari Smith as a big to bring in. He's young, he's 6'10", he could shoot, he could play some defense. We saw flashes of Jabari in that Rockets series, and not even singling out Jabari. I'm just talking that sort of player. Young, untapped potential, talent. That's kind of where the Warriors need to strike gold in order to have a chance at this thing. Like, they can be competitive. I believe that. They could run this thing back, and I still think they'd be competitive for the most part if they just added in a few talented players that could help them out. But in order to, truly get over the top, they need to make one of these moves like you're talking about with a Jabari, and he just pops. Or, for example, when the Knicks went and got Jalen Brunson, and everyone's like, Jalen Brunson, he's not going to get you over the top. There were 15 talking heads saying he's not even a top 10 point guard in the league. And now look at Brunson. Or the Pacers going out and getting Halliburton and Siakam and just kind of putting together this team that everyone continuously slept on. And now playoffs are here. They got 3 point guards. Essentially, they distribute the basketball and they play as a team. And next thing you know, when you have Steph Curry on your team and also Jimmy Butler on your team as well, you cobble together enough of those players that are consistent, and that is how that's the path to the Warriors being relevant for these next couple of years. It's not going to be easy. Let's get real. It's not going to be easy. The window to win championships it's never fully closed until Steph Curry proves that he can't play at a high level. And the way that he was playing second half of the season, if we get 85% of that next season, and a healthy Steph, they're going to be right in contention for playoff spot again, and then how far they can go depends on the rest of the rotation and how they bolster this thing. But let's assume, for the sake of the discussion, that the Warriors use Kaminga in a sign and trade to land this type of player. Not talking a big, I'm talking a shooting guard, I'm talking a wing, I'm talking someone that fits into the Steve Kerr mold potentially. And a couple of teams stand out. And mainly they stand out because there's actually some smoke that they're interested in JK. The first is Philadelphia. They could be interested, we've heard. Now, I don't know what Philly would offer that intrigues the Warriors. I saw in one article they would go like KJ Martin's contract and then a bunch of draft picks to make it work. And I don't really think the Warriors have a ton of picks right now. They're, starting in 2026, they're doing all right when it comes to owning all their draft picks until 2030 or whatever it may be. So that's not necessarily the issue, trying to make the future look brighter. It's trying to maximize on what the Dubs have right now. And that is a few very expensive players that you just have to perfectly craft this thing. Philly has one player that's a restricted free agent that would be an amazing fit. His name's Quentin Grimes. However, a friend of mine's a Sixers guy. I told him yesterday, how about Kaminga for Quentin Grimes, sign and trade? He laughed in my face for a good 45 seconds. So I bring it up on the show so Sixers fans that pop in can laugh in my face. But to me, it starts there. Unless you want to go Maxey or something like that. Not going to happen. It's Quentin Grimes or Sixers. You can forget about it. The other team we've heard a lot of smoke surrounding Jonathan Kaminga is the Brooklyn Nets. And that name that's been tied to the Warriors is Cam Johnson. Brings good shooting, brings positional size at 6'9", two qualities that we have mentioned are very important to the Dubs. Very important. Cam Johnson, 39% from three, nearly 90% from the line, averaged 18 points per game last season. As I say in my fantasy baseball league, when I get thrown offers, to send a streaming pitcher for an injured Mike Trout or whatever it may be, I'll noodle. I would noodle on this trade. If I were in the GM position, I would noodle, whatever that means. Another team that's been thrown around, the Chicago Bulls. They have some smoke around Jonathan Kaminga. I don't want any of the Chicago Bulls except for one guy, Kobe White. 6'5", can play the shooting guard, can play the point guard, bring it up the floor. We already saw him dunk over Wembanyama. He's electric. He's like one of those players that if you traded for, somehow got him in your system and he popped, that is how you turn a team that at best is probably like a 5-4 seed, second round exit into, oh my God, we're back. We're really good because Kobe White plays amazing next to Steph Curry and he is a star in the making. I don't think the Bulls would include him, quite frankly. I think they'd be dumb if they did. And I don't really see anyone else on Chicago's roster that excites me. I don't want to hear any Giddey. I don't want to hear any Vucevic. I'd hang up the phone if Kobe White was not attached to that. And the last name that gives me a glimmer of intrigue is Karis LeVert. And it's due to his positional size. It's due to the fact that he can shoot the three. He's a veteran. Unrestricted free agent, made $16 million a season ago. He could make sense. He could make a little bit of sense there. Are any of these names actually going to be in contention for the Warriors making any sort of move? I have no idea. They may go with a name that I did not say. Another big man that I'm intrigued by. I actually like his game and think he's buried behind too many centers in Boston. That's Neemias Queta. I think he's pretty solid and would be a fun flyer to take. It would just involve a trade, and I don't think the Celtics are necessarily going to trade him, but I don't know. So LeVert is a bench piece only from Veggie Delight. First of all, love the Veggie Delight name. Secondly, yeah, I mean, a bench piece only is not what the Warriors need right now. They do need rotational depth, but if we're talking a Jonathan Kaminga sign and trade, which LeVert wouldn't be, but when we are talking Jonathan Kaminga sign and trade, your best chance to being relevant is getting important players or a player in return in that deal. You have to use Kaminga. If he's not coming back, you got all that game on tape from those last two, I guess it was just the one playoff series against Minnesota, and you have to use that to your advantage and find a team that is willing to basically say, this guy's our future. We think he's awesome. Xavier Tillman, we're getting that. He's an aggressive 5. Steven Adams obviously comes in. Lonzo Ball. We hear Bam Adebayo. I saw a fake rumor on the internet that Jimmy Butler's trying to court Bam Adebayo to the Warriors. Boy, would he be a nice fit. Devin Booker of the Suns. We know Kerr loves him. He'd be there are good fits all around. Question's going to be who is actually on the market? Who do the Warriors need to package together to get it done? Like, how does the league view players like Moody and Kaminga and Podziemski if those are your 3 most tradable assets here? So I don't know. And then we got Luke Cornett coming in that the Celtics may not re-sign him. I'd be looking for bigger and better. If we're talking center position, like that's why I go Allen, and I brought up the name Sabonis, and like it's time that the Warriors get a legit center and not someone that you just plug in and can mop up some minutes and play down low. I mean, that's what you've been doing with Looney for a minute now. And I think that if you can use that JK piece to somehow get you a player that checks all the boxes, and that player that checked all the boxes that I mentioned was Sabonis, all of a sudden you got scoring, you've got someone that can put the ball in the basket when Curry's off the bench, you could play inside-out basketball, he grabs rebounds and takes care of some of those problems that you may run into if you see Houston in the playoffs. Unfortunately, I don't know if that perfect player is on the market. So again, best way for the Warriors to get better this offseason, one is the old fleece job, fleece a team and land yourself that Jabari Smith or whoever it may be that has not fully maximized their potential and comes into the system and just pops, that Jalen Brunson pop, that 5th year, 6th year pop that I told you about. And then the other way to really get better is, hit on these mid-level taxpayer exemption players. Last year, the Warriors went with Melton. They went with Anderson. They went with Buddy Hield. Melton, again, could be another vet minimum guy that is looking for a chance. He knows the system. He looked pretty good when he played. You're going to be paying him nothing to where it's not really going to break the bank by any means. But he's also played a combined like 50 games in 2 or 3 seasons. He is not reliable in that sense. And this is an old team that has injury concerns. We saw it multiple times in the playoffs, first with Butler, then with Steph Curry. The last thing you want is to rely on injury-prone players to break out as your method to getting back to relevancy. However, if he's kind of your 15th guy and you have a few extra bucks to throw at DeAnthony Melton, he was really good on the Grizzlies as a 6th man when you played them in the NBA playoffs. And he was really good when he was healthy for the Warriors. And granted, it wasn't much. It was like 6 games that he played in for the Dubs. So he can't be the end all be all. He can't be the solution, but he could be potentially a part of the solution. Oh, we got Lowry Markkinen in the chat. The Jazz get Draymond Green. They get Buddy Hield. They get Moses Moody. They get Brandon Podziemski. They get Trace Jackson Davis. They get a 2026 first, a 2028 first, and a 2029 pick swap. I love all the detail that went into that, but I'm going to need the detail of who the Warriors would have left on their roster outside of Butler, Curry, and Lowry. We be getting a lot of Pat Spencer run, Post, Guy Santos, because Lowry makes a lot of money too. So that's the issue with going the expensive route, because the Warriors could obviously do it. Like there are ways to shed payroll and to trade certain players that make $30 million. The issue becomes if you get rid of one $30 million guy and bring in someone that's 43. Again, this is a team sport. Indiana has showed us best. This is a team sport. Indiana has got Benedict Mathurin averaging like 15 points per game, and you sometimes forget that he's on the team. They're so deep. That's what the Warriors need to be with their rotation, to the point where if Steph Curry does go out for some load management games in the regular season, which is inevitable, he starts not playing back-to-backs, you have that secondary player that can play along with Jimmy, and it's not Brandon Podziemski. Because Draymond's obviously the star player in terms of defense, in terms of his leadership, in terms of titles, whatever. Draymond brings nothing offensively to the table at this point, and frankly turns it over a lot of times to where you're not as comfortable with the ball in his hands as you used to be. So who can be that player that they bring in? And maybe it's internal. Maybe it is Kaminga. Maybe this entire thing is a moot point and all these players I mentioned are irrelevant because Kaminga is that dude. They saw enough from him in the final few weeks. I will say this. I think if Jonathan Kaminga is on this team next year, then Steve Kerr is not a part of this team next year, which I know he said he's year to year in his end of season press conference, but I think he's going to ride this thing out with Steph Curry for sure. And of course, the comments already saying the Warriors need a new coach. They don't need a center. They don't need size. Just get a new coach. That'll fix all the problems. Not a Steve Kerr apologist, despite some of you thinking so. Quite the contrary. I've ripped him many times this season. I asked when they were losing game after game in the winter if he even wanted to do this thing because he didn't look like he was having fun up there and his team kind of stunk. They're below average. But I don't really think getting rid of Kerr and bringing in Mike Brown or Terry Stotts or whatever the plan here is the move that's going to make you a championship contender. Does he have his flaws? Certainly has plenty of them. But I think the proof is in the pudding that the guy knows how to coach, won a playoff series, helped win a playoff series this year with a roster that had many flaws. And are they going to address these flaws? Because we knew it was a flawed roster last, I guess, 2 seasons ago. And what do? After the Saric experience doesn't work out, they decide to go with less size. They're like, let's turn Klay Thompson into Kyle Anderson, slow-mo, when we're trying to run an offense that, gets up and down the floor and feasts in transition and that gets it to the corner and makes a play. Let's go with Anderson. And we found out quickly that didn't work. Buddy Hield turned out to be a pretty good $9 million player. And then Melton was the other one that they went for the mid-level exemption. So anyways, 41 minutes of content. Chuck Walter, this is Locked On Warriors. I'll be here with you all off season, just digesting all this content and trying to find things to talk about as the months get a little bit slower. I guess the topics these months get a little bit slower. But NBA draft coming up here soon, free agency shortly after that, and the rumor mill is always hot in the NBA, and we're here to break it down on Locked On Dubs. Appreciate it, everyone. Enjoy your day, and peace.